Carolina. Mr. Moran from Kansas. Mr. Brady from Pennsylvania. Mr. Fortenberry. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, recently the Secretary of State appeared before the House Foreign Affairs Committee and confirmed that it is the administration's goal to include abortion as an integral element of reproductive health care provided by the United States overseas. This hearing came on the heels of the Secretary's words of praise for Margaret Sanger as a personal heroine. Margaret Sanger was a notorious American eugenicist who advocated tirelessly for policies to eliminate persons she deemed inferior and unworthy to live, namely the poor, the immigrant, and the black child. While the Secretary at the hearing did rightly deplore the racist comments attributed to Margaret Sanger, the administration's policies regrettably continue to champion abortion both here and abroad. This continues despite the fact that more and more Americans oppose the practice, let alone using taxpayer dollars to fund it or imposing it on persons across the world who may be weak and vulnerable. Margaret Sanger's worldview should shock the conscience and evoke equal condemnation from thoughtful persons on both sides of this aisle. And Madam Speaker, for this reason, I was stunned to learn that in a July 12th interview in the New York Times, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg echoed the sentiments of Sanger. While explaining the outcome of Harris versus McRae, a 1980 Supreme Court ruling that upheld the Hyde Amendment, which disallows Medicaid funding for abortions, Justice Ginsburg said this, and I quote, "Frankly, I had thought that at the time Roe was decided, there was concern about population growth, and particularly growth in populations that we don't want to have too many of." Madam Speaker, did you hear those words? Justice Ginsburg, I repeat, actually said this, quote, "There was concern about population growth and particularly growth in populations that we don't want to have too many of." Madam Speaker, to whom was Justice Ginsburg referring? Who would Justice Ginsburg prefer to not have live? It is unfathomable that in this day and age, a justice of the United States Supreme Court would articulate such a patently genocidal sentiment. This is more of the same, discredited amoral philosophy of social engineering that offers no comfort, no vision of the common bond of all humanity, particularly for those who are weak and vulnerable among us. Madam Speaker, it is with a very heavy heart that I have to say such things. I know we have come much further than this in our society. Millions of Americans believe that we are big enough and loving enough as a nation to embrace the mother and her unborn child and truly care for life. We can do better. We must do better. Women deserve better than abortion, and America deserves better from its leaders. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Ms. Bachmann